Good morning, Pitch Breakfast. My name is Eric Westerdoen, and my company is Calvin's Craft. We make eco-friendly dog products from recycled waste streams. What does that mean? Right now, what we do here in Charlotte is we take spent grains from local breweries, which usually either get thrown away or donated to farmers, and we upcycle them into dog treats. Our products are sold direct to the consumer via our website and also business to business via a network of retailers. Those include breweries, liquor stores, pet supply stores, and we're expanding into sort of more big box retailers. We also have plans and product pipeline to expand beyond just treats. We already have like a dog beer that we make, extending into then hopefully chews, food, toys, and other accessories. And you heard Jessica mention sort of people, planet, profit. We're very similar, but it's more pets, planet, profit. And if you can remember one thing from this pitch about us, we're basically taking that old saying, one man's junk is another man's treasure, and we're making it into a business model that's sort of pet-centric and sustainable. So why are we special? Number one is that we seek out sources of free inputs or ingredients. So we're looking at industrial waste streams, like I mentioned, the spent grains that make our treats, or in the future, we're looking at textile remnants from cut and sew factories to make toys out of, similar to what Cotopaxi does in human garments. Our manufacturing, that's one thing. We've set up a proprietary process for some of this because it's not, when you use these upcycled ingredients, it's not necessarily easy to go to a third-party manufacturer and just say, here's this stuff, can you figure it out and make it for us? And then on the back end, we're doing some interesting things with packaging where our treats are coming in beer cans like this, and it's not something that was necessarily an off-the-shelf solution. Innovative, obviously, I think we have a pipeline of pretty creative products and looking at different waste streams to upcycle. And then distribution, I think obviously there's that plan to get into the traditional places like a Petco, PetSmart, Chewy, Amazon, all that. But the interesting thing, what we've done now is we've gone into some places where we don't have competition. Like we're selling dog treats through breweries, bottle shops, liquor stores, those kind of places where they didn't traditionally sell dog treats, and we don't have any competition. Size of the market, big and only getting bigger, I can say. I think we can all probably, off the top of our head, think of a couple people we know that adopted a dog during quarantine. And also the demographics are changing with dog ownership. Millennials are treating their dogs more like family and spending on them accordingly. So the market, kind of the economics there for us and the trends are really favorable. And then the last part of that is especially consumers, and I think Jessica kind of touched on this in a little bit in her pitch as well. People are looking for those sustainable solutions, eco-friendly, ethically sourced, ethically manufactured, and we're playing in that space as well. So proof of concept, this is something that we self-funded for the last year just to develop the initial product, kind of test the market. We quickly ran into the issue of the product was selling way more than we could possibly produce. And then the profitability as well, for in one can of dog treats, our cost to produce this is about 50 cents, and we're selling those direct to the consumer on our website for $10, and then by the case quantity to retailers at $5 a piece. And then like I said, the biggest issue we're having now and why we're out seeking this seed funding round is because we need some upgraded machinery to meet the demand that we have. So where do I see this in 3 years? I see a big piece of this being a D2C company. I think the brand is fun, it's interesting, it's mimics a lot of the other D2C consumer products that have been successful online. I also think there's obviously a large B2B side to this business, going through some traditional pet product retailers, but even some non-traditional spaces, like I mentioned, selling the dog treats in liquor stores and stuff like that, where people are grabbing some beer and they see a can of dog treats. It's a great impulse purchase. And then the last piece of this is there's a pretty big white label opportunity where we've had some initial conversations with some breweries where we'd say like, hey, let's do a mixed pack and put it in the grocery store where it's a 12 pack and there's 11 beers and 1 can of dog treats in there. So I think there's some interesting, fun things we can do there.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
We're going to turn it over to the panelists now.
And I'm going to go ahead and say that it's Dr. Williams' turn to go first.
Okay,
she should always go first, really.
We're going to make it. We're going to just bounce back and forth. That's the fun part.
Well, this is interesting to me. I do not have a pet, but I would be curious as far as your sales go. How many of your sales are repeat customers? I know my mom's dog barely likes treats. And so she has to find something that the dog will eat the first time and then continue to eat. So kind of what's your repeat customer traction really looking like as far as?
Yeah. So on the consumer side of the business, we've seen about 20-25% repeat purchases. And that's, the D2C side through the website. On the wholesale side, where, we have a sales team that's calling on these accounts, it's been more like 75-80%. I will say with both of those numbers could actually be much higher, but kind of going back to why we're raising this money in the first place. Sometimes I have, we have to temper what we're able to do with, kind of marketing emails to existing customers, that kind of thing, because, at a lot of times we're just, we're already back ordered, we're behind. And so we're like, okay, let's not go out and, push the button on hopefully getting a bunch more sales when we already can't meet the demand that we have. So I'd say, I guess, 20-25 on the consumer side, 75-80 on the wholesale side, but I think those numbers could be higher.
Awesome. 2 more questions. One, is there a rate limiting factor that'll come with the spent grain usage? And then the other question is, super cute concept. I like the product. I can see it in a brewery, it's all of those things. How are you keeping out copycats or competitors of just, kind of stealing the same theme and going forward and being a direct competitor, even if it's not, the same quality?
Yeah, and so if I understand your first question, it was just, is there a supply constraint for us?
Yeah.
So we've kind of done some rough numbers, and that's one of the things that makes us a uniquely Charlotte opportunity, in that we have so many craft breweries here, and then right up the street in Asheville, we have a whole nother, batch of some pretty big craft breweries, and just kind of back of the envelope calculation in terms of what kind of supply that looks like. If we could possibly, exhaust all that supply, then we'd probably be the largest dog treat manufacturer in the country. So I really hope we get to that point. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
So, and then, and on the second part of that, kind of copycats, one part of it is on the supply side, making those supply arrangements a little bit more formal and contracted. So kind of, okay, tying up the supply of spent grains at the breweries is one way. The other is kind of like I mentioned, one of the challenges of this, but it also kind of is a barrier to entry for copycats, is that you can't just go to a third-party manufacturer and say, here's this bucket of spent grains, please turn it into dog treats and put it in a beer can. Because, on the front end, those spent grains are they're perishable. They have a shelf life. They start fermenting after a couple days. And how contract manufacturers work, you can't just show up on their doorstep with something and say, you need to run this now. They have their kind of schedule. And then on the back end and I don't know, let's see, and I can show this. So these are our cans here. We actually put them in a beer can with us, top here. And so we're actually putting a solid product in a can that's meant for liquids, which there isn't kind of off the shelf stuff to do that. So we had to, kind of create that process. And so I guess short answer is there's no way to, there's no patentability here. There's nothing that we can absolutely keep people from copying us. But I think, it's something that would be a little bit difficult to do. And, we're betting on kind of being first to market there. And, I think if someone does copy us, then hey, it's flattering.
Okay.
Yes, copying is the greatest form of flattery. That's right.
Yeah.
A couple things. Funny story. The first billionaire I ever met about 30 years ago was a guy on an airplane to Vegas, and in talking to him, I asked him what he did, and he said, "I'm the guy that went around to all the tire stores, and said, I want to pick up your flat tires and recycle them." And the reason why I say that is because I think you hit on some really important things that I was getting ready to ask at the end that kind of Shantae brought out with her questions. Not only is it a good idea, I believe it is absolutely critical that you tie up supply. And you have to go to these breweries and you have to get them to commit their supply to you, because if that really is intrinsic to the brand, the upcycling part, and it's not just a cute dog treat, then you could have some real supply issues. And I think especially at the rate something like this could grow on the consumer side. So I would take that part really seriously. The other reason why it's super important is because the logistics costs, I know you've got tons of margin right now, but at scale, the logistics of that, there's a big difference in cost between sourcing that spent grain from Asheville than there is from, Sycamore Brewing, right?
Yep.
And so you want to build that cost into the cost of goods sold, and the more local supply you can tie up, the absolute better you are. I'd be knocking on those doors tomorrow trying to lock them up.
Yeah, Steve, that's actually, so part of the genesis of this idea was my previous backgrounds in mergers and acquisitions and investment banking, and actually doing consumer products, and specifically a lot of pet stuff actually. But one of the most profitable deals I ever saw was, it's funny, you sat next to a billionaire with the tire guy. We did a deal for the company that they were the first ones to discover how profitable the used cooking oil was for McDonald's.
That's right.
And they, McDonald's used to pay to get that stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
So they, not only were they getting it for free, they were getting paid to take it, and then they got Wise eventually. But and so that always just stuck with me. And then with seeing all the breweries around here and realizing there was that big supply here, saying like, okay, what else can we do with that? And then that's, I think, where the interesting part of this story goes is, okay, this is one aspect of it, but once we expand into kind of some other products in the pet world, looking at, okay, not just spent grain, but some other industrial waste streams that can be upcycled into a product.
Yeah, I think that I think you're exactly right. Sounds like you got some good experience there. The other reason why I am kind of, not concerned, why I would advocate for a lot of energy and emphasis around locking in the supply chain is, and I say this because my wife is, a big animal person. Our family is as well too. She works with North Mech, and we adopt out, a couple hundred dogs a year. Dogs are and animals are like people. They are finicky. And so there is a question of quality. Like, I bet that all that spent, brewery waste is not made, or created equal. And maybe some of it has to do with what the process was. Maybe some of it has to do with what they were making at the time. Mm-hmm. But there's a chance that some of it could impact quality. And even, you could release a batch that may or may not be desirable to pets. I'm sure you're testing stuff and that kind of thing. But I just think, in this space where there is competition, but you have a really cool and unique concept that, that's staying really close to the brand and the real genesis and the real impetus of the brand, upcycling, and then also just making sure you absolutely lock down supply so you can manage quality, could end up being the real competitive advantage, because it's very difficult then to enter the market. And, outside of your canning and that kind of thing are all unique. They're all good stuff, and they give you some moat. But I think quality is a thing that I would care about a lot as well too.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Thanks, panelists. Thanks, Eric, so much. Virtual Zoom applause there for another great pitch.